Oh, it's working. Share the screen. There's so many things to consider. Slideshow. I only have a few, one slide or two slides. Thanks everyone for coming. Our winter Tableau User Group. I think we usually have 4. I'm talking about for the newbies. Oh yeah, microphone. I guess people online, can you hear me? Yeah. I forgot the microphone.
Yeah, that'll just go noisy on that speaker back there. You probably need to turn it on. Just the button at the back left on top.
So I can start talking loud. So for people that just joined us for the first time, I think there's a couple of new, there's 2 of you that's joining for the first time. We usually meet every couple of months. We love Tableau, we love using Tableau, and it's really like a community-led activity. We share tips and tricks, stories, job ads, if there's people looking for jobs, all that kind of stuff. Thanks for the reminder. So I'm always in a hunt for people to present good stories and so on. I also like to acknowledge challenge runners on the land with me today and pay our respect to elders past and present emerging. Also like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that could be with us today. Amazing agenda, keynote speaker. So I'm going to start with Shahab because you're going to be the first one talking. So Shahab is going to present Tableau design best practices. Tool agnostic. Yeah, I mean, I know you love Tableau and Power BI equally, but thanks for sharing your amazing wisdom. And Alex, all the way from New Zealand, Auckland, just came for that user group, kind of. I don't know if you realize, but Alex did the same kind of talk at the Tableau Conference. And for Tableau Conference, you need to pay $2,000 Australian. So you get this one for free. So we're so lucky. It's amazing. Yeah, and signatures. Couple of plugs. If people are into sports, there's a brand new sport tag. So this one is Brisbane tag. There's Brisbane Sydney tag, Melbourne tag, or whatever. So I'm just starting up a Sydney Tableau user group. So if you're into visualizing sport data, the first event would be not good for our time zone, but I'm hoping to have time zone friendly as well for APAC and our region. So if you're into learning, sharing your sport viz, join there's a link there, or Google sport tag. The next plug, this one was announced 2 days ago, Tableau Conference. A few of us have been. There's a tragic Sam there. She's been at the conference every day.
Tragic as well.
Alex also, he's already booked his hotel. Yeah, if you're on the edge and not sure what it is, or you want to join but not too sure when and how, talk to us. I think the Tableau Conference is really an amazing platform to network and to develop. There's also data from Europe, November. So if you go to Europe on holidays and want to talk and claim that on the tax, like Alex did, for example, and you then just maybe apply for speakership or whatever, you can just, so it's like a mini Tableau Conference in Europe. Usually have a few slides to talk about different features, but I might just skip those and get those 2 presentations, and we can talk about those if you're interested. But there's a bunch of new updates that came with 24.2. Keen to have discussion going if you guys have used those ones. There's a bunch of Enchant Copilot is one of them. There's Pulse. I've done demo with Pulse at the User Group. Just keen to have some discussion going if you guys are interested. If not, we'll just go with Shahab/Sean, and then over to you. So I might just stop sharing. You want to use this one? Would that be okay to add this one? I can hold the microphone if you want.
No difference.
No difference? So
If everyone can hear me well, so that's fine.
what I need to do, I need to escape that and find the slides. For people online, if you have questions, just put them in a chat, or after Shahab's talk, just come off microphone and we can just have a chat. Where's the thing? I can't see the. Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good. Do you want me to give you a screen when you go over time, or not really?
Yes. That's good. Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending this session. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for Fred and Dave for hosting this event. And today I'm talking about the dashboard design best practices. It doesn't matter what visualization tool you're using. It works for all of them because these are the principles of dashboard designing. So to start, first I'm introducing myself. I'm Shahab, independent BI consultant and Power BI developer. I'm mostly designing dashboards for different companies. As you can see, my studies was all my studies were in design, and so but my work experience was in data. So when I combine my academic knowledge with my work experience, it helped me a lot to design more user-friendly and dashboard for the users. You can scan this QR code to connect me on LinkedIn if you're interested. And my company, Hoghooghi, we are working with some other data engineers and BAs and data analysts, helping other companies to helping on their data consultation. And also one other thing that we started a couple of months ago, we are helping managers to find talents. We are what we are doing differently compared to the recruitment agencies is that because we are data experts, we are doing technical interviews, and so we save data managers a lot. Okay, first start with our vision. What we want to talk about today. Dashboards are the tools which provides lots of values for the businesses and companies information, and so sometimes they cannot achieve their best. They cannot present what they should present for the business. The challenges are usually comes from are not because of the inadequate technologies and tools that are available in the market, but because of the lack of knowledge about design and aesthetic of dashboards. So today I'm going to talk about the best practices on dashboard design and some do's and don'ts you should do on designing your dashboard. So dashboards are very important to represent the organizational information, but they usually cannot achieve their best performance. This challenge because of the developers make this challenge make this question that still do we need to use dashboards or not? But fortunately, dashboards are still providing lots of values for the businesses, and so businesses are preferring to use them. It is interesting, very interesting, that usually developers who are creating dashboards, they usually don't have sufficient knowledge of design, how to design the dashboard. So which can be resulted in less effectiveness of the usability of their dashboards. So I'm going a little bit faster because our time is very limited. So it's worthwhile to review some previously created dashboards and some mistakes that usually people make. And I passed these few slides a little bit faster. This one you can see, this is a very bad example of a dashboard design. In this dashboard, you can see it's really, really hard for the users to get in required information. Or this one, I personally get headache when looking at this dashboard. This is very interesting. You can not understand what's happening here and how to compare the numbers. This one shows the wrong use of color and design elements, which can be discussed later. And this one is an example of a fancy dashboard, which is invaluable, and to make the decision for the business to solve the business problems. So first, we should see what we call as a dashboard. What is that? What the dashboard is. So pay attention to that red parts. A dashboard is a visual display of the most important information needed to achieve one or more objectives. So we need to, solve a problem and to show the most important information for the business. But how we should show this important information? This information should be consolidated and arranged on a single screen. So the information can be monitored at a glance. So this information should be shown to the users just on one single screen, okay? And users can get all the data in just one glance. Lego. Probably all of us are a fan of Legos when we were a child, and so we were creating cars, homes, and many more other things using the stories in our minds, and with those small bricks. The data world is very similar to the fantasy world of Lego, and these days organizations are gathering data from lots of different sources, and data is in different types like those small colorful bricks, and that should be organized and cleansed and to get the required information. Then this data can be, given to the users like a story, which helps them for the business to, make a proper decision. We, as a dashboard designer, should try our best to create a dashboard which can tell the story to make a decision, to make the decision-making process easier. So you can see here, these are the 13 common mistakes that usually developers are making, and I will talk about them one by one. The first issue is exceeding the boundaries of a single screen. This is consisting of two parts. The first one is fragmenting data into separate screens. So as discussed, a dashboard should be presented in only one screen. So, okay, but generally it's a strength if we help the users to navigate from one dashboard to another one. If we want to show the detailed information, we should help them to navigate from one screen to another, one dashboard to another one. However, this is challenging. Sometimes the users need to see all the information at one glance, on one screen. So in fact, it's a big mistake to split the information in different pages when they need to be on the same page. For example, here you can see a banking executive should check different key performance indicators for the business, like growth, deposit, loan, and so on and so forth. And any of this information, including the numbers and calculations, are available on the separate pages on the and if the users click on each of those buttons on the left, they can navigate to the different pages to see them. But unlike what we consider as the highlights, which should show us a summary of all the numbers and calculations, that executive should see all the related information and data beside each other.
Sorry, we're not sharing the right screen. Marco is just had surgery, and he's watching online. He's telling us he can't see the screen. So do you mind stop sharing and resharing, please?
Yes.
I can't believe he's watching online. You just had wisdom to remove.
He literally had 4 wisdom teeth.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you go back to Baby, if you find the web browser.
That's very awkward.
And this one, Chrome, and go to this one, and go share screen, and make sure you're sharing the PowerPoint.
Oh.
Or maybe the
entire screen.
Yeah.
And this one, screen 2. Yes.
And now if you bring your slides again. So for an interruption.
Right? Okay. So.
Sorry. Marco, are you happy?
Yeah.
Are you happy, Marco? Thanks, I'm sorry.
Okay. In fact, the executive need to see all the information to compare these numbers to each other, okay, on this first initial page together, okay? So we cannot split the data in different pages. Or in this example, You can see some calculations for 20 different products, and by clicking on each of the products on the left-hand side, you can navigate to different pages. But the dashboard is acceptable if just the sales manager only needs to see the sales performance for each product separately. But the dashboard fails if you need to see the profit and loss of different products beside each other and compare the numbers to each other. The next point is using a single screen on your the next point is using a single screen for your dashboard. Is that you should avoid scrolling on your dashboard. Okay, so you should never have some visuals that use scrolling on them. So in this example, you can see you need to scroll to see all the information which is not available at a glance. This is really a big mistake, that we can only see the top 2 or 3 items in each table, and the rest of the info is not available on the viewpoint of the users. The truth is that people think that what is not available in the immediate viewpoint and needs more effort to see has less important than the other data. And also many users don't bother themselves to do that scrolling, and even sometimes who is doing that scrolling is not happy to do that. So the next mistake is sometimes you are creating a visual that doesn't have sufficient description, and it cannot transfer the values to the users. So the case here, you can see have some important information, but you can see that they are not able to transfer the valuable info to the users. For example, in the middle gauge shows us we sold X amount of units of products, but what it means? It means that, does it mean that our sales were great, or we didn't meet our expectations? At least the gauge could have some numbers on them to some which can be more meaningful for the user. You can see how much easier to show all this information in a table below. It's much easier to read and it's much easier to read, and it's more understandable for the users. So, and they can make better decisions just by using a simple table like this one. The next probable mistake is using over-precise information or lots of details on the dashboard. The dashboard needs to show only the main and important information which is required for a better decision making. You may have a database with lots of different information, lots of columns, and you don't need to show and present all of them to the users. For example, in this one, you can see in this dashboard, you have these 2 red rectangles here. I mentioned one here and one here for you. In this below one, you can see the numbers have 4 to 10 decimal points, which I believe that it's not necessary, and maybe 1 or 2 decimal points is enough for us. And on the top one here, you can see the alert date time shows in the precision is in seconds. But do you think that we really need that precision in seconds? A measure is only meaningful when we know what should be measured and what units should be used. The calculations are not working when the users cannot understand the meaning clearly. In this case, you can see that the budget and actual revenue in 2 different lines. What is important for the users, important and hard to understand here is for the users is that to find out the difference between the budget and the actual revenue. Indeed, the variance is the key factor here. So it is required to replace the last visual with this one, and so it's much easier for our users to understand the variance between the budget and actual and make better decision. And using the wrong visual on dashboard is one of the most common mistakes that all of us probably faced with it. It is crucial to use some visuals that can easily transfer information to users without any misunderstanding. For example, pie charts are one of the worst graphs that you can use on your dashboards. Here you can see Facebook has around 40% of the share of the market, but how the visuals shows us, our brain thinks that unconsciously that it has more than 50%, around 50% of the market. Or YouTube has the share is around 25%, but it seems that it gets more than 1/4 of the market. This chart here, you can see it has make a comparison between the cost and revenue. You can see how it is difficult to read the numbers, to read the information from this visual to make the better to make a comparison. It is much easier to show the same information in a column graph like the below one. We can understand how much easier for someone to get the required info. So always put the user's shoes on, and instead of using weird and fancy graphs, try to use graphs which can transfer the precise information in a very, very short time to the users. Using meaningless visuals is another mistake that some developers are making. Do you know when it happens? It happens when you are using many tables, many bar graphs, column graphs in your dashboards, and you think that, okay, now it's the time to use some other visuals to make it different. This is the meaningless visual trap. So, for example, here you can see different types of visuals which can increase the time and effort of the users to understand what should be transferred to them. So, the next mistake is using poorly designed visual which can make it clear which cannot make the clear connection with the users. Unfortunately, most of the graphs used in different businesses are poorly designed, and it's because who are usually create these graphs, they didn't have any training and about fundamentals and principles of design. On the left graph here, you can see is very hard to understand. And the only thing we can understand from this pie chart is that the blue color has the highest share, and the purple, then the next is the purple one. And the rest of the colors are very close to each other, and it's really hard for the users to distinguish between them. And also, apart from that, you can see the labeling was not defined correctly. And so according to my experience, try not to use pie charts and donut charts on your dashboards as much as you can. And if the business asks you to use them, only use when the categories are not more than 2 or 3. It is correct that the bar graph is one of the most and best, to show the information, but misusing them can be resulted in making mistakes. In this bar graph, there are two things that which makes it challenging for the users. First thing is that using that vertical and horizontal lines, guidelines, make the reading the numbers very hard, and I recommend you not to use the guidelines on your charts, and instead using the labels on the bars. The second mistake is using a three-dimensional representation, which makes it hard to read the data accurately. Sometimes quantitative data are being displayed in a way that shows inaccurate values. Here you can see the vertical axis scale is not defined correctly. Okay, each column shows the revenue and cost, and you can see how easily a mistake in defining the scale can be resulted in reading incorrect numbers. For example, here for January, look, the revenue is around 1 million, okay? And the scale shows us the cost is around 1/5 of it. But if we look, the correct number is 600,000. So it's very important to pay attention that our visuals don't make any issue in reading the correct numbers. Dashboards should show a large amount of information in a very limited space. So if we won't organize them correctly, there isn't any result except a mess. This is very important, and this important information have to be clear and bold. It should be seen immediately when the users look at the dashboard. In fact, the dashboard should be designed in a way that enables users to get the answers for the business problems. For example, in this dashboard, you can see the mistake in placing the visuals on the dashboard is very clear, and it is not clear which visual is more important than the other one. The developers place them wherever they like, and so the different colors they use different colors, and it makes a confusion for the users. Let's describe in this way. Human's eyes sees the dashboards in this pattern, like a Z shape. It means that the most important dashboard should be placed on top left, and then we should go to the top right, bottom left, and bottom right. It means that the most important visual should be placed here, and the least important one should be placed here. How I usually create my dashboard is something like this one. However, this is optional, and you can design on your dashboard based on the requirements of the projects. I mean that there isn't any, must to follow this rule, this approach. But what I'm talking right now is the best practices. But more important than the best practices is that the requirements of the business and project. So try to change this pattern, based on the requirements of your project. So in the area number 1, I usually put the logo of company. Number 2 is where we should put the title. In area number 3, I usually put the last refresh date and time. This can be moved to here, button here or here based on the your project. Your design, you can change it. And here, the area number 4, I usually put the slicers and filters on this area. It is the best place, but sometimes, again, based on your project, maybe the number of your slicer and filters are 2 or 3. You don't need that much big space, so you can move them somewhere, for example, below this title, and or you need more space on your canvas for your visuals, so you can change your design. But the main area of the canvas, again, here where we put our visuals, we are putting the visuals on the Z shape. Most important one here, then here, here, and here. So when you look at the dashboard, your eyes should catch the most important information immediately, even if they are not located on the most important area. The problem here, you can see in this dashboard, is everything in the same size, and this can be resulted in lack of focus on the important elements. You can see these buttons on the left-hand side, which attracts the highest amount of attract the highest attention, but unfortunately they don't have any information in them. So, and you can see all the graphs are at the same level. They get bold and colored, and so the users cannot concentrate which information is more important than the other one. It is true that everything on the canvas is important, but more important is that users should first see the most important information on your dashboard. Another common mistake is using useless decorative elements on your dashboard. This happens because developers think that if they use some decorative visuals and elements on their dashboards and their reports, they can create a pleasant feeling for the user. So, but you should remember these fancy elements may be attractive for the users at first, but little by little, users' beliefs change when they see that they cannot get the answer, the information, extract the values from your dashboard. Sorry. In this, the dashboard designer tried to make this dashboard as much as possible similar to an electronic control panel. If they aim to educate users like a simulation software, that's fine, but not as a dashboard. As you can see in this dashboard, fancy and decorative elements, and they don't have any. This dashboard is fancy and it doesn't have any aim behind it, and they cannot provide the opportunity for the user to get the required data. Or here on the map, you can see the column graph, the map, and this table. All of them are showing the same information, and the rest of the field were filled by the gray, white, and blue colors. And if I have a question from you, if you are the user of this dashboard, are you happy to use this dashboard every day? My answer is a definite no. And so in many cases, overusing colors is a big mistake. Colors should be selected wisely and think about. Colors should be selected wisely and think about the meaning of using each color from user's perspective. Some colors are warm, so they attract more attention. Some colors are cool, so people pay less attention to them. Also, when a color is different on one visual than the other visuals, people think that there should be something important on that visual, that the color is different. Or sometimes you can see two visuals with the same color. So our brains try to make a connection between those two colors, okay? And so many of us are thinking we should use red, green, and yellow on our dashboards to show the important information. But do you know that 1% of female and 10% of male are colorblind and they cannot distinguish between these colors? Some dashboards are really designed very ugly. To be honest, when we look at an ugly dashboard, our brain tries to run away from it and don't look at it. So we can't get the required information from it. You may think that this point has contradiction with the previous one, that we shouldn't use decorative and fancy elements when a dashboard is, but it's not. When a dashboard is not appealing for the users, they think that it's useless too. When we say the dashboard should be attractive, it doesn't mean we need to use some elements which distracts the user's attention. Indeed, we need to present the data in an attractive way. For example, here in this dashboard is not really interesting. You can see the designer of this dashboard try to, make this dashboard attractive, but it's clear he couldn't have enough. He didn't have enough knowledge of design on how to do it. You can see he stretched this, column graph without any logical reason. It seems that we just wanted to fill the space, or the shadows around the visuals I think that it's too much dark. Maybe you can use a, lighter gray, or the image below the title here. It doesn't have any, reason behind it, and it just distracts the user's attention. Always remember this point, that simplicity can save you most of the times. And what I presented today is from these valuable books with some changes regarding my experience, and you can increase your design knowledge by reading this valuable book, Information Dashboard Design by Stephen Few. And the end. Any questions?
Thanks, Shahab. If you have questions, can I ask you to speak in the microphone for the online folks? Any questions? Thanks. I really love the examples. Some of them are pretty painful. GeoCities 1981, whatever. But no, it's good presentation, good examples. Any questions from the audience? In the room or online as well? Lucky Marco can talk, because I think we're much more.
Question/comment. That was really a really good talk. I really enjoyed it. Some, like Fred said, some of them were pretty horrifying, but in a funny way. I'm interested to kind of talk about, or ask about, talking about one dashboard on one screen. One challenge I find all the time in building dashboards, literally today, is designing for screens of different sizes. I kind of take the point of view that we are so used to being able to, like, looking at a web page, scrolling down, that if we are designing for, it's sometimes just impossible to put everything on one screen in certain, dimensions. That if you have to, fit stuff on one screen, it's better to have a vertical scroll than a horizontal scroll. But I'm just keen to understand, like, what your perspective is on that. So, at work, I have designed for laptop screens, but also like 32-inch monitors, which is very, very difficult sometimes. You have to strike a balance. Yes. Just wondering what you might think about that. Thank you.
Usually, about the size, I usually change the screen size before starting any visualization to 920 to 1080, which is the normal size of all the screens today. And in terms of, when I talked about the reasons why we shouldn't use, scrolling. But if we want to show more information instead of using that scrolls, it's better to have different dashboards and different screens and navigate between them using buttons, using, I don't know about many tools have drill through, for example, using these kind of, options to navigate from one dashboard to the other one. compared to using a scrolling, because to be honest, no one is doing that scrolling, and no one see that what you created for them.
Stephen Pugh did some. What Sean's talking about there is straight from Stephen Pugh, and I remember very succinctly him saying, if you've got a scroll bar on there, you've lost 2/3 of the audience before you start. And that was one of his absolutely adamant things. And the other one, Sean went through very, very eloquently, but I remember him using a slightly different expression. If it's ink that's on there that's not data related, get rid of it. So, you know, non-data ink was one of the expressions. It is very, very black and white in the way he thought.
Thank you for your talk. I'm keen to understand, like, obviously really factoring in like different audience levels and all that kind of stuff when you're designing. How there's obviously in the recent years there's a big push on accessibility and visual accessibility. So visual impairment, color blindness, all these type of things. Like, where do you even start with trying to understand like those type of basics that you need to incorporate now, so that text is big enough for people to read, color blindness, how do you make sure that those things are covered when you're trying to present data in these dashboards now?
Just if you Google it, you can find lots of information on the web, what colors is better to use. Even some software they have some options to change the colors just to in two colors, just for people who are colorblind, and this is the option many softwares are available. But try to just not use these colors which are very close to each other. For example, green and red is very tricky, especially if the green is a little bit dark. It's really hard for the users to understand, distinguish between the colors. And so
gray and pink don't go together.
Yeah. Maybe it's easy for the women, but for men, it's really hard sometimes to distinguish between the colors. I'm not really expert in colors, so I cannot answer you well, but maybe we can just search on the web. It's the best.
Thanks. I think we need to wrap. Thanks again, Shahab. I think it's super useful. When you design Power BI, you can read it. Before I forget, Alex, you want to set up your thing on? Before I forget, thanks, Kina and Jeff, for hosting us again. It's during some if you have events or things that you want to plug, or looking for stuff or stars.
So right now we do have a lot of stuff happening in the background. I'd say just keep your eye out in your inbox. But we've started. You can see we've got a different layout in here. We had a showcase for Coalescent here a short while ago. Pam, wherever you are, was here for that. How was that, Pam?
It was very good. Very good.
Did you like Coalesce?
Yes.
So the other thing I was going to say, while Alex is getting set up, we've got fresh pizza there. If you want to get a piece of pizza to have ready while you're watching Alex, be quick. Very quick.
Don't be noisy because it would interfere with the presentation. You want to grab it now? 2 minutes? 1 minute?
Yeah, I reckon just 2 minutes. How long it takes to...
Hey, quick. I'll set a timer and I start no matter what.
Okay, let's go to Thanks again. I know that. So for people online, just in case you didn't get, we're just having a quick break, a couple of minutes. Virtual pizza. Did we say 2 minutes? Did we say 2 minutes?
1 minute is well.
Do you want a t-shirt? As
I have
a gift. You want to maybe like do a quick quiz, like based on your content, and whoever wins the that? Like a record.
I have somebody in the question. I don't know. 20 seconds.
Run! All four, one go.
So,
I was high as a kite. I was spiders on the wall. I was on the wall. Right.
I'm not sure who's said
but I'm supposed to talk in the microphone, right?
Yeah, but I think if you're talking this one,
No, doesn't matter. Like, if it doesn't make a difference, I'd rather have the mic here.
you talk with your hands. Let's go.
all good.
Some last people come. Yeah, that's it. Very good. So today I want to show you how you can save days, literal days. In fact, I recently talked to somebody who is basically able to save 5 days every month just by applying these kind of techniques and developing things slightly different. Now, as a child, I always thought being a hacker is pretty cool. You stare at black screens, you make robots do the work, and you get lots of things for free. Now, if any of you laughed about that, you might get a call from the police station. These days, my apps have a dark mode. I let my computer do my work, and I get free time because of that. So really, I'm a hacker. So I achieved that, what I wanted to be. But let me show you how you can sort of, what I've learned over the years and how you can sort of do that in a similar way. I want to talk about how to use very basic development techniques to make your life easier and save yourself and your colleagues a whole lot of time. And you will be able to apply those techniques, obviously, in Tableau, but that applies to Excel, to databases, to Salesforce, to any kind of development work you do. It's really just fundamental techniques.
Oh, sorry. Is that a picture of you then?
No, that's a GPT creator. So we'll start with some audience participation. If everybody could just stand up. I'm sorry for the people online, but that's what it is. So I'll ask three questions. If that matches you or what you're doing, you can sit down, and we'll see who is standing at the end of it, if anybody. So sit down. If you have duplicated production workbooks, so that's, let's say, the same workbook for the East region and the West region, or the same workbook for Australia and New Zealand, or the same workbook for people who deal with one product versus people who work with another product. Yeah, that's a few. Then sit down if you do the same task over and over again, and that might be every month you open a workbook to adjust a filter, or every day or every week you need to run a workflow to refresh data.
So that's Tableau's fault.
Well, we can discuss that later. Okay, let's see if we can get the rest of you. If users break your dashboard, if they do things they're not supposed to do, they end up on screens there where they're not supposed to be, and then they call you up and complain that it's broken, when in reality it was just a user using it in a way that you didn't anticipate. Okay, good. So we have three people standing. If you want, you can leave, because I don't know how much you're going to learn today. But you're welcome to stay as well and see if there's anything new there. Now, for the rest of you, rest assured, you are not a bad developer. There's tons of reasons why that might be. The bad news, though, is after today, it will be your fault and you will be a bad developer because you know how to deal with these things. So usually the reasons to end up in these situations might be that you have an inexperienced developer who doesn't really know how to use the features a tool provides or apply them in a structured approach. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an inexperienced developer or a very junior person. You might have, like I work with very experienced database developers, and when they start working with Tableau, they try to apply the same techniques from database development, which doesn't often translate. And because they don't know the tools or the features that Tableau provides, they try to solve things with, for example, custom SQL, which is notoriously inefficient. You might have tight business timelines or requirements. I think we all have that. Your boss calls you up, you have to pull an all-nighter to deliver something the next morning, and you can't really worry about scalability or maintainability. And maybe sometimes it's a lack of self-confidence. Maybe you started a new role, maybe you don't just feel it's your place to criticize or to question an approach and suggest a different way. But before we get into all of that, who am I and why should you even listen to me? So my name is Alex. I'm originally from Germany. For the last 10 years, I live in New Zealand. I work about 9 years with Tableau, about 17 years with data in one way or the other, and about 20 years sort of developing in various languages, and 20 years of, when I created that slide, I scratched my head a little bit when I saw that. I run the Auckland Tableau User Group for the last 7 years. I'm a Tableau ambassador for the last 3 years. And this year I started my own company. So I'm basically a freelance consultant. I'm doing work, mostly in New Zealand, a few Australian clients. I have clients helping them with their Tableau development, but usually a lot of that is also data-related work in the underlying databases. And what I'm talking about is partly personal preference. I just hate doing things repeatedly and coming back to things and fixing things. But a lot of that is just professional experience. I worked in consulting for around 10 years. So I worked in a lot of systems, and most of them are very badly designed. Maybe not originally, but they ended up that way. So I fixed a lot of errors and problems, and a lot of things that were developed wrongly by others and myself, because I learned more, and then I got back to my own things and realized, oh, you really should have done that differently. And what I found was that I learned development techniques in various stages during my education, but that's very technical. Like, here's how you do a loop or an if statement or that sort of thing. But it very rarely talks about structured development and how to develop something based on best practice, that you don't come back to it over and over again. If you work in development, you might know about dry, don't repeat yourself. That's sort of the basis of that. So all of what I talk about today is guidelines and best practice. It doesn't mean that you have to do it this way. It requires your personal judgment to see if it makes sense in that particular circumstance, or if you want to do something differently. So we will talk about 3 things, what I call the 1, 2, 3 rule. We will try to look into the future, and in the end, we do what every good hacker does: we break things. You're welcome to take pictures. At the end, there will be a link to download all the slides. I also wrote 3 blog posts on these 3 topics. The link will be there as well. It basically goes into even more detail of what I'm going to talk about today. My contact details, and obviously if you have questions. So the 1, 2, 3 rule, that is basically the developer version of an English saying. I forget the accurate one, but a famous American paraphrased it something like that. So really what it means is that if you do something for the first time, just do it and go on with it. If you do it a second time, realize that you just repeated yourself and be conscious of it. If you do it a third time, then change it. Because likely if you do it a third time, you will do it a 4th and 5th and 6th time. And at that point, it just doesn't become maintainable anymore. So a real life example I experienced recently was somebody I had a discussion with, and they had that sort of workflow. They got data out of an API, put it in a database, or when they first started providing that to their clients, they had that. Put the data in a database, run a prep workflow, created a hyper file, and put it in the Tableau workbook. Easy for the first client. They got the second client, and the easiest thing to do was just copy and paste the whole thing, because you don't impact the first workflow, you don't have to refactor things, It's just easy. They got another 100 clients afterwards. They literally ended up with 100 workflows, and every month they created 100 files, 100 Tableau workbooks, or printed them as PDFs 100 times and sent another 100 emails out. You can imagine how much time that takes, and how, like, if you need to change something anywhere there, how much work it would be to change it across all of these workflows. Now, this is definitely the most extreme example I have seen so far. But there's lots of examples in my experience, and probably that you might have seen as well, where much fewer iterations, but you run into the same problems. There's copies of the same thing. You need to apply one change, and suddenly you need to apply it 5 or 10 times. So please don't do it. Whenever you are in this situation, try to think about a way to approach it slightly differently. And there's a few other examples that, especially in Tableau, come up. I talked about the workbooks for different business units. Something I see really commonly, you just need to change a filter or something, so you copy the workbook, change the filter, and provide it to your users. Again, it's a super easy way to do it, but once that somebody else requested it as well, you create a whole lot of work for you and your colleagues. If you use the same filters every time you connect to a database, every time you filter it down to Australia, the country down to Australia, or every time you filter it down to this year or the last 2 years, or whatever it might be, put it in the data source, because you might know it, but if somebody else works with the data, they might not know it, and suddenly they get the wrong numbers because they look at data that they shouldn't. And lastly, if you use the same calculations, and that's actually something that is wrong on so many levels, but if you have a calculation like that, first thing, if you do it in different workbooks, like how do you maintain that if something changes? And then also something in here, if suddenly you change it from, it's not the category field is not called category anymore, or not cat anymore, it's called category. And you need to go through all of the calculation and changes everywhere. That's just not maintainable. So the underlying root cause is something like, you have a workflow, and that might be something that, like I talked about before, it might be something where you create a complex calculation and you need to apply it, and you create it, people work with it, and everything's great. And then you get the requirement to do it a second time. Now, the easy approach, again, is to just copy it, because you don't impact your production workflow, and you can just go on with it, great. And then you do it a third time, and at that point, you should stop. You should always stop and think about, okay, I did something 3 times. Is that really justified? Is there a different way? And in the majority of cases, there will be a different way. Because once that grows, and once you need to change something, you just spend too much time to do it. So what would a hacker do? A hacker would just consolidate that into one workflow and split it up as late as possible. So that often means that you need to create a little bit more effort up front for you to make it dynamic, to make filters dynamic, to make sure that the calculations work for different use cases. But once you have done that, you can do it very flexibly. And if anything ever changes, it's quite easy to just change it once, and everything that depends on it downstream will adjust accordingly. So in general, to solve these problems, I sort of find there are 3 main categories that you can think of. One is to think outside the box. And I often ask question my clients on the requirements. Is what you want to do really necessary? Do you really need to do it this way? Because there are other ways that don't give you exactly what you're after, but close enough. And I think what it doesn't give you, you didn't need in the first place anyway. If you have different workbooks, usually it's for access purposes, for example. Is your data really so secret that nobody else in your company can see the data? In most cases, it's not, because sales team, well, they see each other's data. Nobody really cares if they're not in direct competition. Who gives? If you work with, but if that actually is a requirement, there's things like row-level security that let you implement that much more robustly, and makes it much easier to work with it. Then it's also that Tableau is not always the answer. The tool you're working with or required to work in is not always the answer. It's a great tool, but it's a great tool for reporting and visualization. It's not an integration tool. It's not a database. It's not made for all of these things. It can do some of those things, but it's not meant to do that. So if you do have row-level security requirements, consider doing it in a database. If you have complex transformations to do, consider something like prep or Alteryx, or doing it in SQL. If you have actual integration, there's MuleSoft, there's Fivetran, there's other integration tools that allow you to do these things and make it much more robust and much more maintainable. And lastly, create templated solutions. So that is not one workbook and I copy it, but sort of one flow that is able to scale and to use and to ingest different data points as well, and transform them dynamically. So really what I want you to do is to be lazy. If something seems cumbersome, chances are that there is an easier way and you can do something simpler to make your and your colleagues' life easier. So then we try to look into the future. We will not need a crystal ball and it will not help you to win the lotto, unfortunately. But there are a lot of predictions that we can make about our data. Some things are really certain. Months and years will change. If you set a filter to 2024, your dashboard will break in January next year. There's no question. It doesn't matter if you are at the company or not, it will break. Some things are less certain. Facebook famously rebranded to Meta. Names are not constant. People get married, people change. Names of products change all the time. So if you define filters based on names or workflows based on names, this is likely to break at some point. I can't really tell you when, but it will break in the future. And then there's really uncertain things. I know a previous boss of mine usually asks the question, does it pass the big red bus test? Will it still work if I'm getting hit by a big red bus tomorrow morning? Now, that is definitely sort of the worst case scenario, but it makes you think of it. It's not even that it needs to be a literal bus, right? But you might quit your job. You might be sick, you might be on holiday, something might break. Will other people understand what you did and will they be able to fix it? Or even you move within the company, you just work on a different project and suddenly you don't have time to look at these things anymore. Does that work and does that adjust to that, and will other people be able to understand it? There are, again, a few high-level approaches to that. So we will look at a little bit of code and a little bit of tables and technicalities, like a good hacker would, but it's not too much, I think. So make things dynamic, especially for dates. I said before, filter things down to 2024. Especially if you start developing a dashboard, it's a really common thing. I just want to look at this year's data, so I set the filter to 2024, and then I forget about it. So whatever you do, if you have date filters, just don't do it. From the beginning, just select this year. Make it a relative filter and anchor it on the minimum date, the maximum date, this quarter, whatever it is, it might be. And with min and max, you can sort of select your latest data that is available, so you're really flexible in what you can do. But also things like the axis layout in Tableau. For design purposes, you can fix it and say from, I don't know, 0 to 20,000, for example. That's great. Until next month, you have a month that is literally off the charts, and you sell $25,000 worth of goods, and suddenly the mark is not there anymore. So be aware of that, and if you fix something, it will cause problems down the track. Again, it's not really clear when or how, but if you can make it dynamic, it should be dynamic. And if it doesn't look nice being dynamic, then you should do something differently. Just fixing it for data that refreshes just to make it look better is not the right answer. For filters, make them as generic as possible. If any of you work in SQL or basically any tool really, if you have worked with something and there was suddenly a statement where ID equals 1, 2, 3, or where category is not 5, sure, that has a reason, but usually that was implemented by somebody who left the company 5 years ago. And for me to understand why that's there, I don't know. Like, should it still be there? Is that still valid? Do I need to create a different solution? Do I need to apply the same filter? I don't know. Nobody really knows. So we already established filtering on names is not the right way. So filtering on IDs is definitely a better idea. So in this case, say we wanted to exclude Alice and Carl here, we could just exclude 1001 and 1003. but really that doesn't tell anybody anything, and we don't know if that needs to be adjusted in the future. So really question there, why do we filter at all? So we can, ideally somebody can tell us this, and there are requirements for a dashboard, but we all live in reality, and that's not always there. So let's have a look at the data. And we might see something like that. And for us here in ANZ, it becomes quite apparent. But here we want to filter out Alice and Carl in Auckland and Wellington. So sweet, we can do that. We could filter on Auckland and Wellington. And if we hire somebody else in Auckland, if we hire somebody else in Wellington, they are excluded as well. And the advantage of that already is it basically doesn't need documentation anymore. If I filter on office equals Auckland, that tells me what it is. It tells me that the report shouldn't include people in Auckland. There might be a reason for that, sure, but at least it's understandable. But if we look a bit further, we can clearly see, and all of us know, Auckland and Wellington is in New Zealand, Sydney and Melbourne are in Australia. So probably what we want to do is create a report just for Australia. And again, at that point, it becomes nearly self-documenting in that I can see now that that is a report for Australia, and I can connect accordingly. I know why the filter is there. I know what it does, and I know if I create a new report, if I need to consider that or not. Now, the other thing I want to point out here is the include and exclude in Tableau and any other tool, right? I have two options here. I could either say we include just Australia because we create a report just for Australia, or we say New Zealand is a very special place, which it is, but we need to treat it just differently. So we exclude New Zealand and we consider just Australia and every other country. If tomorrow we open an office in the Philippines, it'll be included as well, and that's what it should do. So if you create filters, again, that's something from the beginning. Don't just choose the option that makes you tick the least amount of options in the filter. Choose the option that makes the most sense. And if new data comes in, that acts how you want it to, or behaves how you want it to behave. And then make it adapt. Again, that's one way to filter that if you don't have a country column in there. But if we open an office in Christchurch, then that will be, based on that logic, it will be in Australia as well. And that will create problems down the track again. So a much better way to do it is to actually define explicit else's. So I know in my data I have Auckland, Wellington, and Sydney. I know what country it is. If it's any other Sydney, call it undefined. And yes, somebody will pick up on that. Ideally myself, but in the worst case, it's a user and they see something undefined, they will call me up to change it. I know somebody who did exactly that independent of me, and they didn't put undefined but unicorn in there for testing purposes. Everything tested fine and no problems. It was rolled out to production, and months later, there were rumors about a unicorn in the data. But that's exactly what you want, right? It works. People will see it, and it will pop up, and it will not just be lost. Because if it's not there, then Christchurch is considered Australia, and nobody will pick up on that. Because, like, especially if you have a new office, it's small sales, like it's just a rounding error, and nobody sees that number as well. So be thorough. Think about all the edge cases, account for them, and document them. I know nobody likes it, but also develop in a way that needs the least documentation as possible. Again, if you have filters that are explicit, where you can see what you filter on, it makes it much clearer than just having a where ID equals 5 and nobody knows what it is. And lastly, after we build everything as robust as we can, we try to break things. But we approach it as one of the good hackers. We want to expose flaws and fix them rather than permanently damage things. Now, if you can think of anything that could happen to your workflow, your dashboard, chances are they will. The more people you have using the dashboard, the longer it is in use, the more likely it is that something's going to happen to it. And if you did everything that we just talked about, chances are that that's fine, and you covered most of your bases. But especially in the beginning, it might make sense to sort of think about that a bit more. Like, I don't really explicitly test it. Well, I do some testing, but these kind of things, I just do them automatically because that's how I develop. So a lot of that I just skip because I know it will work. And I typically think about that from two different directions. One is from upstream and downstream, right? One is the upstream system, the database, the API, wherever the data comes from, and the other one is the user who actually works with the workbook. So in that case, I try to think about my most unexperienced user and what they could do to get the complete opposite insight of what I want them to do. And you'll see there's a few ways in Tableau where you can just accidentally do things that make it look like a valid dashboard but give you the completely wrong numbers. So for example, we have five salespeople here, and it looks like Michael had a banger of a month and smashed any targets. Is much better than any other salesperson. Until we realized that we hired 3 Michaels last month. Now, you laugh, but again, it's a very common thing. We work on names for products, for people, or these kind of things. And that works at the point because we are a small team. We only had 1 Michael, but it changes over time. Consider these things. Bring an ID in there, unique identifier of some sorts, and no first name, last name will not be a unique identifier either, to make that work. Also, imagine we hire just another 10 salespeople and we have fixed the whole thing. Suddenly it's squeezed. So think about these things. How does that behave if you get more data? In this case, if you have it dynamic, in the worst case, you might end up with a scroll bar, but that's something, once it comes up, you can address that and change your design in one way or the other, but at least people are still able to see it and be able to interrogate the data. Now, what if the opposite happens? We are in August right now, we create a year-to-date report, everything's fine, the layout is nice, until in January and February next year, you just have 1 or 2 huge giant bars, and your user comes to you and reasonably assumes that the dashboard is broken because it doesn't show all the data. You know that it does exactly what you told it to do, but from a user perspective, that's not quite clear. So consider these things. What happens there? Should we rather use the last 12 months, or should we scale it in a way that it has space for 12 bars and just adds 1 every month? These are the things like, how would a user perceive it, which also comes back to some of your points. And lastly, what if there's no data at all? What if a refresh fails? Is a user able to pick that up? Should you put a refresh time or maybe the latest data in the data on the dashboard that a user can identify that they work on stale data or what data they can expect? If you refresh once a day at night and you have refresh data, or you have a new data point at 1 p.m. on your day, a user can't expect that to be there. So you save them and yourself a lot of work in the call if you just put it in there and let them know about it. So a couple of other things, especially in Tableau, that I look out for. If you haven't looked at tooltips too closely, if you have it on for too long, it opens this control buttons on the top, and you will be able to filter out anything that you click on. Now, you might want to allow your users to do that, but that allows, like, a hypothetical salesperson to exclude a bunch of sales from their colleague to make them look good. Snapshot it, put it in the presentation deck, and suddenly Bob here looks like he didn't reach his quota. I'm not saying anybody is doing that on purpose, but if it can be done, somebody will do it accidentally. Just playing around, like assuming it'll do one thing and then forgetting that it's there, snapshotting it, putting it in the board report, and suddenly the sales are much lower than they're supposed to be. I literally go through all of my dashboards when I put them in production and deactivate that option that they cannot do it, every single one. The other option is for filters. Imagine you report across different countries, all in local currency, and your filter allows you to select all. And you aggregate your New Zealand dollars, Australian dollars, US dollars, and whatever else. It does not make sense. So for every filter, have a look if the all option is there, or if you have checkboxes or radio buttons, and if that makes sense. You can disable that, and in most cases, you should disable it because it doesn't make sense. And lastly, load test your solution in real life scenarios. It's really easy to sort of work on a development thing, push it into production, and then assume it works. But there are often things that you just cannot test. Like if you have a really big user base and there's a long anticipated dashboard, suddenly you have 1,000 users accessing your dashboard at the same time. How do you test that yourself? Like you can, because there are tools to do that, but do you actually do that? If you create extracts, do you have them run and observe them for a couple of days to make sure that they actually run successfully in production? They might interfere with something else. There might be another job running or too many other jobs. There are not enough resources to run it, and suddenly it fails. Now, again, something that you can't really pick up on testing. So keep an eye out in production, at least for the first few days, to see if they run successfully. So be proactive. If you realize that there's something that could break in the dashboard, it's likely that it will break in the future. So fix it right there and then before it becomes a problem. So in summary, I'd like you to be lazy. Don't do things repeatedly. Be thorough, cover all of your bases, and think about what might happen. And be proactive. Find the flaws in your solution and fix them right there and then. Now, I have a little bit of homework for you. When you get back to your office tomorrow or next week or whenever, check one of your dashboards. Check if and else statements catch exceptions and notify you if there's something that is not defined. And check if users can misuse those filters and exclude things that they shouldn't be excluded. Now, I want to leave you with one final thought I had while I was doing that presentation. There we go. And that was that applying these techniques and reducing manual work is really not just good practice, and really what it is self-preservation for yourself and your colleagues. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alex. Just before we kick on, any questions? Who would like a microphone?
Do you mind checking on the bit? Yes, right? Come on.
Just a very small one. I noticed that in that case when statement like the else you put undefined, is that because not many users would understand the word null?
Good question. Yes, like generally I would always avoid to put a null in there, but the first example didn't have a null. I mean, yes, you could just leave the else and just say list all your cities. I think my particular example was using the else statement for a valid value. If you don't use it, yes, you could have a null, but I think that's probably something where, yes, that would raise more questions, and especially non-technical users wouldn't really understand that. Also, depending on the context, it might actually be considered a value itself. So yeah, if you have something very explicit there, it just takes all the ambiguity out of it.
Awesome. Just one more question along the topic of the command buttons in the tooltips.
Yes.
Would you recommend that we disable the sort controls as well? You know how you can sort descendingly and things like that.
In distinct date charts, for sure. I never thought about that. In most cases, I don't think it really matters. Again, like if you have something like distinct column charts for dates and then people sort them by size, that's just silly. But I don't think you can actually disable it. Can you? You can? Okay. I'll learn something. So yeah, actually, that's a good point. I've never considered that, but I will from now on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just one other, you asked about nulls. A common practice in data engineering is just to take nulls that are through part of the system and just surround them with hashes or something like that, so that you get an actual value for null rather than just a null. Then when you get a genuine null, then it can be differentiated from other things that it might be a normal null. I'm not sure that's right.
No, yeah, I think that's actually a good point, that it like you create artificial nulls there that are not in the data. So if if somebody else looks at that now, they might be tempted to look in the underlying data for them. Like, yeah, I think if you have something explicit, and I personally have experienced that a couple of times, where like if it's clear where the error comes from and what caused the error, then it's really easy to fix it. If it just says null, I don't know where it comes from. It could come from anywhere.
Yeah, if it comes from the original data source and you're surrounded by the hashes, then you know it's a null in the original.
Yeah.
If it's otherwise a null showing up, then it might be through the way you're joining the data.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I was going to say, I just use emojis.
Yeah. Okay.
That cucumber one.
If you use something on, if
You're
you
also sitting there and you spotted Chris Curtis off in the distance.
so yeah, for the people online, the suggestion was to use emojis and not undefined. If you can, if it's something that raises eyebrows and makes people question the data, it works.
There's someone online that's got a question for you, Shahab. So, any more questions for Alex before we wrap? And we get.
Well, if you scan that QR code that goes to my website, again, you can download the whole slide pack as well as read the 3 blog posts about all the details, and find me on LinkedIn if you want. Thank you.
Thanks again, Alex. Alex, do you want to come off microphone and ask your question? Shahab is back on the. Are you there? Alex? Or maybe type your question in the chat. Why don't you write your question in the chat, and then you can see the question coming up. Yeah. Unless I need to make you a presenter. The final QR code didn't work.
My QR code?
Oh, no, which one? I think it was about Shahab's presentation.
Mine.
Did you have a QR code?
Yes, I had. You can search my name as well. But I think some of you.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Alex, I made you presenter. Maybe can you able to come off mute and ask your question? We don't quite understand it.
I wasn't allowed to come on mute before.
Just
yes, that's all right. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Great presentations. Thank you so much for them. I really enjoy them. But with the first presentation, for me at least, the final QR code after the book didn't work. And I was just hoping to get more details on the book, but because that slide was just passed way too quickly, that was all.
Okay.
But yeah, that was missed.
Maybe we can send the book email or the book link.
I'm gonna come off mute. Sorry, my kids are making mess here.
Yeah. This book is a little bit old one. If you can see, can you see?
Are you not showing the screen? Are you showing the screen?
No, it's the whole screen.
Is the screen share?
So Stephen Pugh's website is perceptualedge.com.
Yeah.
That could be useful in finding those books.
Maybe we can put an email.
Okay, sure.
An email and
the name is Information Dashboard Design, and the author is Stephen Pugh.
Yeah, go for it. I think that's a good choice. Do you want to do a quick demo?
Yes. So I was just reminded that I spent a significant amount of time on building something that I should plug here. So I'll do that now. Who of you know how to work with custom color palettes in Tableau?
No, we don't.
Yeah, okay. That's like a handful. And how convenient do you find it working in XML?
Amazing.
Not at all. Very good. So that's why.
You're good, Sergio.
Yeah, I should do that for learning, shouldn't I?
It's not showing on the screen.
Yeah, it'll come over.
That's it.
Yeah, so that's my website, visco.nz, and there's the color manager for Tableau. So what you can do is buy me a tea. But that was not the point of it. So you can let me. No, I can't do that. You can upload your preferences XML there, and you can change all the colors there. You can also just copy any text you have with hexadecimal color codes. So if I just type anything, it comes on with the color. I'll put another one in.
66666.
Now that's boring. It's the same color. Very good. And then we do another one.
It's actually a pretty cool tool. Save me a lot of time.
Very good. So we could create a categorical palette. We can also click just create everything. It creates a whole bunch of different palettes. Now it doesn't distinguish if that makes sense or not, like depending on the, like this one, for example, here. It's completely useless. So I just remove it, that one as well. I can sort them. I can reverse them because the smaller values should be pink. I could edit that. No, that's a bit pointless, but I can edit it here and say, okay, I actually want another. I want another gray in here. So I save that. Can give it another another name, and then I download it. And there you have your, well, I can't open it. It'll open Tableau, it'll break.
You don't break my preference file.
Okay. But anyway, so then you can put it in Tableau and it just works. Yeah, that you can't open a TPS with Tableau, but Windows tries to do it automatically. Anyway, if you replace your preferences file with that file, it has all the colors now in there, and you can use them in Tableau. It's free to use. Spread the word. Thank you.
Just a quick plug. If you want to wrap up, I finish. Just a quick plug before I forget. We're meeting every couple of months. So the next one I've checked is end of November. But I'm looking for speakers. So I'm just watching in the room. 1 or 2 speakers. So if you're keen to present something about Tableau, that is related, just come forward. Dave, over to you. Thank you.
That's probably a wrap, everyone. I think there's still some pizza out there. There's beers, obviously, drink, coffee, tea. Just